Hello and welcome to the Full 42. I'm your host, Chris Amador. This series is dedicated to the people I've met along my journey and their stories. This conversation is with Billie Groom. Billie is a best example of living life on your own terms. She has traveled throughout the Americas having adventures while finding homes for homeless animals. She is an author, a podcaster, and an expert in canine cognitive behavioral therapy. She's an impressive animal advocate, someone who truly walks the walk. And so it begins. Billie, I cannot tell you how much I've been looking forward to this conversation with you.
I as well.
You are the superhero of all, the patron saint of all animals.
Well, thank you. That's an interesting title, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Chris. Thank you so much.
Wow. I mean, just having to go over your bio just a little bit was just, you've lived 4 lifetimes.
And yet I still feel like I have so much to accomplish. I need 4 more lifetimes.
Wow. So looking over your bio, like everything really changed for you in the early 90s when you started your own shelter. You grew up in Northern Canada?
Central Canada. So Ontario, actually southern, just like north of, I guess, Buffalo or New York for all those Americans listening, in Toronto, straight north of there. So I wasn't in downtown Toronto. I was raised in what is now Amalgamated, but at the time was just a small town. So yeah, that's where I was. But I've lived on the East Coast and the West Coast, and I had a shelter in North Carolina. But it was unintentional. It was all unintentional. It wasn't a well thought out game plan.
So what was childhood like for you in that area?
That's an interesting question, because I actually have just recently learned more about it in the last couple years. I was in a small town, so we were a really good family. My parents were great. They were well liked, part of the community. And then they were, which I don't normally share, but I knew this from when I was 7, but I didn't know how it affected my career path until a man got a hold of me in early 2019, just random. I met him actually on LinkedIn where I met you, or he saw me there and then got a hold of me. But he wanted to get a hold of me to tell me a story. So he called me one day out of the blue in early 2019, and asked if I was born with the name Leslie and born in Port Credit. And I don't hide that. So I told him, yeah, I was. And he said he saw me on LinkedIn and he saw what I do for a living and what my passion is. And he wanted to tell me a story because he felt like it was really important for me to know. And I knew what had happened to me when I was 7, but I didn't know this story. And I guess his family pet, which was a great dog, he lived in the same community I did, and he was about 10 years older. So at the time he was 17 and I was 7, and his family dog got out of the yard, which is just rare. And there wasn't internet back then or anything. So rumor got around town that my parents had taken his dog in and was looking for the owner for this dog named Flash. Well, I guess my parents didn't know the dog's name was Flash, but so he came over to my house and I was there, but I didn't really come out. I was really shy. I still am really shy. And he really gravitated to my parents. They're wonderful people. And he was so appreciative that they took his dog in, and he was so happy to get his dog back. And he really, really loved them. And then 2 nights later, they were killed by a drunk driver. And this really affected him. He really had, it really affected him. And he saw me a couple months later in the school yard. And I would normally start with this story. I don't share this story a lot, but it's hard to talk about my childhood without jumping around. So he said that he saw me in the schoolyard and he wanted to come over, but he didn't, because he didn't know what to say to me. And he knew that there were challenges on who was going to take me in and what to do and how to do that. And he realized that the challenge was in people knowing how to relate or to be comfortable with people with a checkered past or with something that is different, or they don't know how to relate to them. And in my mind, I was still the same little girl. I was myself. I was just my little girl, except I was living with a different family, not far from where I had lived. And he feels that I took this over to dogs because my mission became for people to be able to feel comfortable bringing in dogs with unconventional pasts, or learning how to understand and how to integrate them into our lives and to not be afraid of that. And until he told me that story, I never really connected, and I never talked about my past because I didn't want it to be affiliated with my successful career and what I do and what I've done. I didn't want it to be which is funny because here I am saying that story first off the get-go, but it's because you asked. So I had no intention of doing that. But I think that he's right. I think it became my passion that people can learn that they can do this, and that they can learn, because a lot of dogs were given up in the adolescent stage or euthanized for behavioral reasons. I started to take in a lot of rescue dogs in the early 90s, getting back to your first point, taking in a lot of rescue dogs and just traveling in the States unintentionally in a bus and finding dogs. And I just felt that this isn't that difficult. This isn't it. Why are these dogs being surrendered, and why are they being euthanized? Why are rescues, which rescues back then were a lot different than now, but why are they struggling? Mm-hmm. I came back to the Toronto area in Toronto, and I started a daycare, and I only worked with dogs over the age of 6 months. I just gravitated to the dogs in that difficult or awkward stage. It was a very successful business. Toronto was very welcoming, and the rescues were welcoming. And I got the opportunity to help a lot of dogs that would have been euthanized. And it grew from there. But now that I've heard that story, I feel that became my mission, just to understand dogs with a different past, and to understand why people were being challenged, and to provide the solution more than anything. So I spent my career creating my methodology that is geared specifically to adolescent dogs. They don't have to be adopted. They could come from a good home and people who started out well and they did everything right and with all good intentions. And then the dog hits that adolescent stage and it's like a guy at the party with a lampshade on his head. You know, he's just all of a sudden this idiot dog's like, what happened to my dog? So it could be that dog, but they get given up a lot when standard techniques and techniques during puppyhood don't work anymore. People feel frustrated, or they feel like they're failing their dog, and they're not. It's just you need to switch methods. So I created this method, and that became my career.
I mean, that's an intense beginning.
I know. Sorry.
Yeah. No. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. But that's really no. Don't. Do people shame you for that event, or do people just say that's too much, or?
Well, not a lot of people know it. Well, they do now, but they
really?
They do now because of your show, but they don't. I've never really shared it a lot. A lot of people don't. I've moved a lot, so I have a lot of different friends and different people that I meet, and they wouldn't know. I've never really shared it. People from my childhood do. I don't share it on my podcast, but I found that people who knew it, I think he's right. And what he said, and his name's Peter, and he did have that guilt of not knowing what to say or how to treat someone with that. It's not that people were mean. I think people wanted the best for me. Lots of people did. Nobody shamed me. Yeah. That's okay. Nobody shamed me, or nobody thought anything horrible or thought I was this bad person. They just didn't know where to place you or me.
Okay.
Or where to, it is a big responsibility to bring in somebody else's child. But I just didn't want people to feel that way about dogs. And there's a way that we can do it. And there's a way, and same with children and anyone with a disadvantaged past, or they can we just have to respect that they have their own way of thinking and they have their own history and their own experiences and they think what they think and they are who they are and just need to connect with them and relate to them.
Right.
You do that on your podcast every time. You relate to people really well. I just teach people how to do it with dogs. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I was asking that question, because my experience has been that when I tell people tragic or life-changing events, usually it's, well, I've had something happen to me which was worse. And I'm not comparing, I'm just letting you know my story. Yeah. And so it's been hit or miss. Some people have been quite empathetic or sympathetic, or some people have not been, and which has been really odd why they haven't. I'm not looking to cry on anyone's shoulders. I'm just looking to tell a story, how you receive it.
To relate.
So I'm glad that people were receptive,
Well, I don't know how they feel. I don't know how people feel. Some people feel how they process that is their own. Is their own way of processing, and how they feel on that, and whether they can bring that into something in their own world or their own life. I mean, everybody's different on.
Was there a pet that changed your life? Was there a pet that just stuck with you and just said, "This is what I want to do. You're the reason why I'm in this. You're the one that I think about all the time"?
That's my soul mutt, Chance. Her name's Chance, and she actually required 0 training, ironically.
Really,
as a behavior, and she's the only dog I've had from puppyhood. But she was the one where I realized and it was the early 90s, and I was going from Texas to North Carolina in a renovated bus with my boyfriend at the time, which was really not that romantic, although it sounds like it should be, but it wasn't. But we had a number of dogs, and this guy had a number of dogs and very little money, and this man pulled over on the side of the road. We were out just letting all the dogs out for a pee break. He pulled over in his very expensive car with his very expensive suit. And he said that his wife's dog had just died of old age and looked exactly like Chance. And Chance came from crap. I got her in don't go into a shelter because you'll end up getting a dog. And I did. And it was a really rundown shelter in Texas. And she had just come in and was laying on the cement and had tons of ticks and was about to die. And the guy running the shelter just said, yeah, you can have her. It doesn't matter. She's just going to die. I don't want her. And he was just eating his submarine sandwich. He didn't care. So I took her and she's the one I ended up having. And I've rehomed hundreds of dogs. So I knew, and even before that, I had homed a number of dogs. So I knew I have this ability to home dogs. I don't, some people foster fail all the time, which is great. They just keep the dogs. But I love getting dogs their right home. I love putting them in where they're meant to be, because not every dog wants the same home.
Exactly.
They're just like people. They like different lifestyles and different, so they should find their own home. But Chance just, he said, back to this man, he said, I really want that dog. It would make my wife so happy, and it looks just, and he was willing to pay a lot. And there was something about her, and she looked at me, and I'm sure she would have been very happy with him, but she became my sidekick for 13 years. She saw all the dogs come and go, and she helped me with them, and she taught me a lot. All the dogs taught me a lot. I learned everything I know from the dogs.
Right. Now, you went to, from this, how this happened from so you started your own shelter, and you wanted to make sure that you were getting the ones that were about to be euthanized? And
I didn't really have a shelter. Yeah, okay. I didn't really have a shelter. We had 24 acres in North Carolina that dogs would come and stay on, but it wasn't really a structured shelter. It wasn't an intentional structured shelter. Probably nowadays it wouldn't even be legal. Who knows? People do what they do. It's not exactly the most regulated industry, but I never took donations. I just used my own money. So there wasn't anything illegal about it, but there wasn't anything overly structured. Lots of dogs did come into that shelter. And then when he and I went separate ways, I brought a number of them up to Toronto. And that's when I started a daycare, walking and boarding out of my 2-bedroom home in downtown Toronto. And that was before those professions were popular. They're really popular, and I think they're great for people to do, and they're great for dogs. People have very successful businesses with them, and I did in Toronto. I ended up selling it. But because I only took in dogs into that business that were over 6 months, I learned a lot about them, and I had clients who became clients for the daycare or boarding, and they became training clients. And then I just moved that way and gravitated that way. So I never had big property after that. I've never had kennels. I've never had structured shelter set up. It was just always in my home. I moved to a small town called Dundas, which is just outside Hamilton, Ontario. And I lived in a tiny 450 square foot home with a shared driveway. I wasn't popular with my neighbor. I had lots of dogs. The registered rescues would give me their dogs. So that was legal because it was under their umbrella. And then other people would just tie their dog to my doorstep, and other people would hire me. Rescues would refer me so that they didn't have to take in dogs. People would call them and say, "Can you take my dog? I can't deal with this." And they would say, "No, just call Billy." So it worked for them too, because they never ended up having to see the dog. The people got to keep their dog, and everything worked out well. And it just sort of moved along from there. I got a lot of unintentional press, bad from the SPCA, and I weren't exactly on great terms all the time, because back then, they ruled that world. But I just did my own thing because it felt right, and it's what I was doing. I didn't really realize I was entering into an industry that was unregulated, and I didn't really think about it. But at some point, I knew I had to make that decision. People were starting to hire me. So I had to make that decision. I have to figure out what I'm doing here. Why is what I'm doing different than what other trainers are doing, and why is it working? I start to connect with veterinarians and psychologists, talk to them about what I'm doing, and realized it's not grounded in conditioning methods. I know this isn't a dog show, so I won't get into it. But the standard methods are grounded in conditioning, whereas mine's grounded in cognitive behavioral therapy. But I learned that after I learned what I do. So it was backwards. I didn't learn cognitive behavioral therapy and then apply it to dogs. I learned it from dogs and then structured it to be able to explain it to people. Because people were hiring me and it was working, but I knew I had to get I'm not a formula type of person. I'm not rule oriented or structured. So I had to take that and put it into some kind of formula so I could more easily teach it to people and come up with some terminology. So that was interesting for me. And then once I did that, and I studied actually other dog training methods, just more so to see the difference, because that's where my clients were coming from. They had all hired, like 98% of my clients have hired certified, really good trainers. It's just the method. They need to switch the method. And I had to understand that. I had to learn what they were doing and how dogs think and why it was successful with puppies, but not with dogs over 6 months, and not so much with rescued dogs and dogs. A lot of the dogs I work with have come from the Korean meat market or the fighting rings, or they've lived on the streets. I've gone down to Mexico and Costa Rica. I've taken in dogs from the Spanish hunting dogs. So you learn from all these different dogs how they think and learn differently. So I had to understand that.
I mean, like I said, you have really lived a life. My God, I mean, this is incredible. It's like where to start. It's like I feel like I'm in a what do you call those things? God, it's like where you reach into the ball and you pick a number and like, oh, this is number 46. It's like there's so many layers about your life. It's so interesting. Like where to begin. Bingo. That's what it is. Bingo.
Bingo. Yes.
So what was the genesis of having to get in a van and go across the country? And was it to rescue animals? Was it so that was a mission, like you would rescue? Or
no, he was in British Columbia, which is where I was. I had moved to British Columbia, and I was working. I was doing regular jobs and somewhat doing a whole lot of nothing, and met him, and he was from Texas. So we were going down to his home, back to his family, back to his home in Texas. And his mom and I are still really close. So they lived in a very, very tiny town. Like the only businesses were the gas station and the liquor store, which did very well on both behalves. And that was, so that, it just took in dogs as we were going down. He had a rescue dog and I had a rescue dog when we met. But it wasn't necessarily talked about. It just became.
And were there some memorable, some great memories? And like, what was was there checks and balance with some were not so great and some were fantastic, or just got to the point where the bad was outweighing the good and you decided, gotta go on?
From him? Yeah. Yeah, he had his issues. He went back home. So, but I was young, so not that you can't leave your partner when you're older too. But I also, I never wanted children, and maybe in the back, I don't ever recall any of the decisions at the time being like, this is a bad decision. It probably was somewhat of a bad, I've certainly made my fair share of bad decisions, but I think I just decided, no, I want to go back to Toronto and I need to figure out what I'm doing here. And I wanted to work with animals. I actually applied at the Toronto Zoo, which is a major zoo. Now I've learned I'm very opposed to zoos. They did have their place, and perhaps they do have their place in research, but I'm vehemently opposed to animals living outside their natural environment.
Yeah.
And
I agree with you. What did it for me was I never really liked them, but it was just interesting to see the animal. And when I went on vacation in California with my ex-girlfriend, we went to the San Diego Zoo. We saw a polar bear there. And the polar bear was just going back and forth, and it just wouldn't stop. It wasn't stopping. And it just kept going back and forth. It was so anxious. It was a really hot day. It's not used to that. And all it has is just this little pool to go around and to kind of cool off. And it was going crazy. And from that point on, I've never attended a zoo ever since. And that was
good for you.
1994, I think. But yeah,
good for you. It does. It takes something like that for people to think, wow, this isn't something I want to condone. And so it's funny that you mentioned polar bears, because I loved the polar bears at the zoo. I would go in and clean I was very low ranking there. Although I did work very closely with a veterinarian to figure out why animals weren't, like you said, being natural in their environment, or why they were getting sick, or why they weren't eating or procreating. I found that super interesting, really understanding the natural behavior of animals and why they wouldn't do something, which is interesting because that's how I approach working with dogs. It's not a matter of training or obedience. It's if they're doing a behavior, there's a reason. So looking back on it, I think that did have an effect working with that veterinarian, because she was really interesting the way that she would combine and holistically work with animals. It's not just the animal has to eat, let's get it to eat. But why isn't the animal eating? Or why is that polar bear pacing? And I loved the polar bears. I'd go in and they gave kisses and they were so friendly. I absolutely loved them. But yeah, now I'm at the point that I tell the story about the zoo. For a long time, I didn't, because I was just so embarrassed that I worked and that oh my God, I wanted that job so badly. But it is a part of what I did. And like you said, you learned that just from being a visitor. I learned it from working there. It was terrible.
In a way, it's like I would kind of like to go work in a zoo so I can be around these majestic animals. But at the same time, they're caged. no, I don't want to be around that either. I want to be able to touch one and pet one and, without them biting me, whatever, except stay away from the zebras. But I heard they were really nasty.
Well,
so
I guess if you get a nasty one, but I think you could just go take a trip, go kayaking is a wonderful way to see animals. Like kayaking is, if you kayak in the places or hiking, and I think you should. I think people should see animals in their natural environment. And if we can't because they're dangerous or hard to see, then, oh, well, too bad.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's no reason, like we've understood the polar bear enough where we don't need to have it caged.
No.
The same with
it's not our right.
Like it's not our right. Yeah, no. I mean, most people think I'm a hypocrite because, in one hand, it's like I'm a huge, huge animal rights activist. On the other hand, I agree with hunting, and I wish we didn't have to hunt, but unfortunately, like there's enough deer out there that the numbers need to go, or get some wolves to be able to bring the numbers down. But
there would be a natural way to do it.
Another way,
and people can justify anything. People,
Sure.
tradition. They can use tradition to justify. So the bull fighting in Spain, they'll say, well, it's tradition, and the bulls, it's what they want to do, and it's not. What they do to those bulls prior to going in the ring it makes it look like, but they're escaping from torture that's happening just outside, and so they see the light and they run to it. But I mean, I'm a boxer. Boxing is my favorite sport. But boxing, both people in the ring are consenting adults. They both know the score. They know the game. They like it. They know the sport. They're athletes. They're professionals. And they want to be there. That's not the same with a bull in a ring. Don't give me that fucking tradition bullshit. It's not tradition, and the bull doesn't want to be there. So I don't think it's the same thing at all. But they can justify it with tradition.
Yeah,
in their own mind.
I've got really good friends in Spain, and they agree as well. It's like that tradition needs to go away. It's all BS. It's total BS.
Yeah.
It's another way of just glorifying the way of slaughtering an animal, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
you can look
and
at it as
ego
art form all you want,
and money.
Yeah,
it's ego, money, tradition.
You are a boxing fan?
Yeah, it's my favorite sport. It's so funny. I'll go for runs. And I just shadow box everywhere. And I just love boxing. I think I used to teach it. And like coach it. Did a little bit of corner.
Nice.
And some coaching. And I love it. I think it's
Billie,
the greatest sport.
You are my new best friend. You are my new best friend ever.
Yay.
You too. Friend.
You too. That's awesome.
Did you watch the Canelo fight?
Recently?
Yeah.
We didn't get it here. Fight. Oh, yes. I never really watch them as they're happening. I don't have TV that does so.
Okay.
And because of COVID, I used to just go to bars. I love watching bouts in bars. So before COVID, that's what I do. So I don't get them live, but I do get the reruns of them. And I do. And I also really like watching amateur.
Yeah.
I really like it. So I'm not there is some really good talent, but I'm not a stats person, and I'm not I'm more when I'm actually watching it, the body stance and what they're doing and the skill set. I like all that. But yeah, there's some and it came back. It kind of lost popularity for a while, and then, as you said, there's some of these good bouts. And is that the boxer that you follow the most, Canelo?
Oh yeah. No, my Puerto Rican family would not speak to me if I was not a boxing fan. So they love me.
Right. Puerto Rican boxers are so amazing. Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your one, eh?
Yeah. My brother was an incredible, talented fighter. He was a very talented fighter.
Oh, wow.
My cousin, Pedro, he trains all the top fighters. He trained like Frankie Yeager. He's really well known as far as in the fighting community as somebody to go to if you really want to learn how to be a fantastic fighter. Like he's
wow. We have to connect on this later. Yeah, like we have to connect on this because I'd love. Wow, those people are amazing. Puerto. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Now you're my new best friend. I don't have a best friend that's not four-legged or three-legged if that's how they come.
Right.
So you're my new two-legged best friend. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I've got the boxer nose where I've got no cartilage there. Yeah. Yeah. So it's
best looking noses in the world.
Yeah. It's like I had them taken out the fourth time it broke. So,
one
last question about boxing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I boxed like a Rocky Marciano with no skill. I was just more of a brawler.
So kind of like an egg beater?
Stop punching. More or less, yeah. I mean, I could hit hard. I could hit really, really hard, but it was...
I bet.
Like if I would take two, I would take one to give two. So that's not...
Good for you.
Yeah, if you want your brains to not be scrambled by the time you're 40, you don't fight that way.
Yeah.
So,
that's interesting. I was very defensive, so it didn't make for a lot of excitement. I was very hard to hit, very fast and defensive, and so... they don't always like those in the shows, right? It doesn't always bring. Yeah. I started late with boxing. I was always, from about 16 on, I always really got into cardio. I'm a total cardio junkie. So I was, I did the aerobics because, what girl didn't in the 80s do the aerobics? Right. We all did.
That was that time.
And
it was like Jamie Lee Curtis and everybody was doing like what, Taibo and stuff.
Yeah, kickboxing and it came later. But so we were all doing the aerobics and that kind of thing. And I just wanted a different cardio. I wanted a super high cardio sport. So I just took boxing lessons without the intention of actually boxing, because at that point I was pretty little, quite a bit older at that point. Somewhere around 30s. So I certainly didn't enter into that whole circuit on a high level, but I did. I enjoyed it, but then I moved quicker over to coaching. Yeah, like you said, having your brain not scrambled is a good idea.
I mean, I had to go through I just spent a lot of years having to deal with TBI and had no idea until I got it cured. And for the first time in my life, I like, oh, this is what life is like when your brain isn't on fire. It was pretty, I dealt with TBI for years. It was not fun.
Wow, that's crazy. No, good for you. Yeah. Wow, you're an incredible guy. That family history. Wow, that's cool.
If I didn't have the cure, I wouldn't be doing this. I really was just ADD like crazy. Like I think a lot of what troubles a lot of people out there is like there's so many people who suffer from TBI don't realize it until much later. I didn't think I did either until I got cured, and it's like, oh my God, the brain is not meant to be on fire. This is weird.
So is that from getting a concussion? Is that from getting a concussion? I don't know exactly what that.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had a doctor do a brain scan. And he said, "Were you a professional boxer?" I said, "No, I used to box." He said, "Man, you've got a lot of scarring, quite a bit." So.
That's tough, eh? So what does TBI stand for?
Traumatic brain injury.
Oh, traumatic brain injury. Okay. Yeah, I dated a guy who was a brain surgeon. He was not impressed that I boxed. That didn't last long.
Did he say goodbye because he found you a boxer? Or?
I took a bye, actually. Yeah,
Really?
Okay. Well, he was never really impressed by it when he was very, very introductory dating, so it wasn't a big deal.
Oh, I see.
There were a number of things, but yeah.
One last question about boxing, and then we'll move on. Who do you think won the fight, Canelo or Mayweather?
Oh. Well, I'm talking to you, so I have to say Canelo, don't I? I want you to still be my best friend. No, I'm kidding. I would never do that. I always say it like it is. I always say it like it is. Sorry, go ahead. What's your opinion on it?
No, because there's two things that you have that are absolutely you're my best friend. One, you love animals, and two, you love boxing. So anything you say at this point, I'm gonna think you're the best person in the world. So.
So, man, I'd have to have a full-on discussion over that one, I think. it's funny, the stuff I remember and the stuff I forget. And as I go through life, it's funny. I've traveled to places and, I'll try to do Jeopardy. And it was like, oh, I lived there. Oh, I know that stat. Oh, I know that. And I'm just the worst for memory. I remember large concepts. It's so funny. That's how I am. And people who know me really well, which there's very few people who do, will say that they're not surprised that I'll forget like the simplest things. I think our brain gets too stuffed with things and we get too worried. I would say I'm a self-absorbed person. I'm not selfish, but I'm self-absorbed. I'm very what I'm in and what's important to me at that moment and what's important. And it's almost always animal related or somebody doing something that they shouldn't in regards to animal or having a mission on that. And I'm just self-absorbed in that, and my book and my podcast and spreading awareness. And then other stuff is kind of what I'm doing in that moment, but then it's gone. I've never really thought about myself that way, but people who know me really well are like the funniest things. I don't
know. I don't think that's self-absorbed. I mean, you have a mission in life. You have a mission that you want to bring awareness to animals and to people and understanding and how they behave. And therefore you're not triggered by what they do and taking it. No, if that makes you selfish, then I'm the most selfish person in the world, because I want the world to meet interesting people so they can have a greater understanding about life itself. So, if that's selfish, I'm selfish. But I think what we now have to do nowadays, because of what we've been taught for over the years, we have to how can we say this? How can I say this? Relabel things of what's healthy selfish and what's selfish. I mean, nobody wants to be a narcissist because, if you want to be a narcissist, you're going to be very much alone. I know your future, because narcissists love to have certainty. So my certainty needs are, I need to get up in the morning, have my couple glasses of water, and other people, their certainty is like how valued I am on Instagram or whatever else, and that's fine. I think
it is very independent,
self-centered. Yeah, it's very self-centered about what people. I need everyone to love me. It's like, no, I don't. It'd be nice, but I don't need it.
That shouldn't be a goal. No. That shouldn't be a goal.
Right.
And it is interesting because we were watching about, what's important to, going to the moon, or how wealthy billionaires use their money, or creating a plane that can take us across the continent in a fourth of the time that it could. I just don't find stuff like that important. I think, and it's just, but people just have in their heart what is important to them, or in their head, and what that's driven by. Sometimes it's money, and so they have to sit back and think, what is that driven by? But anyway, that's a bit off topic. But yeah, I think self-absorbed is needed in order to accomplish goals. Selfish is very, what one person would think is selfish, another isn't. I've never wanted kids. And for the age, I'm in my mid-50s. So back when I knew I didn't want kids, which was forever, I've never wanted to have them. So people, obviously back then, that was a little radical, not hugely radical, but a little. It was a little different for people that, in your 20s, to just know so definitely that you don't. Some people would think that's selfish. Some people would think it's selfish to spend your whole life raising your kids and not doing anything else except being a good parent. Is being a good parent selfish? I mean, the idea of selfish, I think, comes from the reason why you're doing something. Does it come from a good place, or does it come from a selfish place? Exactly.
What's the reason behind it? Exactly. What's the intent? Because your intention could be to bring awareness to a lot of dogs, about the dog behavior, but at the same time, you have this need to control and certainty, and you could be exacting that on other dogs and people and stuff. So, yeah, what's the intent?
Yeah,
and I agree with you.
I'm really laid back in my industry. I I'm not part of like a huge part of the industry. It's very rural oriented and uptight. There's some trainers that I get along with well, and they're really laid back. But for the most part, I just haven't had the same learning journey and haven't had the same reason why I do what I do and haven't had the same career path or the same goals. So it's not that we don't get along. It's just, it's interesting because I'm like that. I'm just a hippie by nature and I'm not rural oriented. And I just feel if people are doing what they need to do and doing well and doing good in the world, then they don't need my opinion of them. And exactly. I'm like that as a dog trainer. I don't tell my clients how they have to live their life with their dog. I don't tell them whether the dog can be on the couch or not on the couch. I don't care. I just have them tell me what they need addressed, and I help them.
It gets done. Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of remind me of my, there's a friend of, somebody I met who made a huge impression on me. I think about her at least once a week. And I met her 8 years ago. I wish I can share the name and location. I'll do my best to try not to, but at the same time, tell a really good story. So right off the coast of one of the Central American, because I saw in your bio like Costa Rica, and that just I got to get to that later on as well. One of the islands off the Central American coast, one of the countries there. There's this island where this woman who made a major, major discovery, which propelled us, into the future for quite some time. And as a result of this discovery, she is quite well known for it, and basically got enough money to have her own island. Wow. So on this island, her house is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. She takes care of a bunch of animals there. So she heard that there was somebody that was going around and stealing a rare lizard or something like that was illegal to do. That was illegal.
Okay.
And so she heard about it. Went to this person, slipped a Mickey in his, I think that's the word, like that's what my parents used to say, Mickey, or like a drink, something in the drink. And the person passed out. The person woke, and again, this is rumor, hearsay, don't know for sure. Person passed out.
Sounds like a great story.
With one of his testicles removed.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I'm all for that.
That's what I mean. I think you two are like separated at birth. You're friends.
Yeah,
and you know what? I
totally
kind of agree the same thing. I do. I would do the same thing. If you can't respect life, it's like there's a part of you that needs to be sacrificed.
Yeah, and I'd open all the cages and let all the lizards go, and let them all go, and you gotta do what you gotta do. And
because we're just caretakers here. We're not. It's not about alpha crap. It's not beta crap. We're caretakers.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So now that
I'm glad she did that. She sounds awesome. No, I love that story. Yeah. That's great. It's a tough one in the rescue world because it's a matter of just getting the dog and doing what we can do. And sometimes, not sometimes, but on a regular basis, the thought of cutting off the testicle is right there in front of the brain. But sometimes it's just a matter of getting the dog, getting it out of the situation, and giving it what it needs physically, health, veterinarian care, and then behavioral wise, and then getting the dog in the home. And you just then do it all over again.
So knowing that you are deeply passionate about animals, and by the way, when you said you're in your 50s, it's like, yeah, right, I want to see some ID.
Thank you.
Clearly cardio is the way to go if you want to look young. Incredibly young.
Drink lots.
How did you deal with being in the business and hearing and seeing cruelty? How did you learn how to deal with that aggression? Because I know when I hear about it, I want to tear down a house.
Yeah, wow. Big topic, eh? That's a big topic. I did start all this from animal advocacy as yourself with what you do, but in becoming a behaviorist, I feel like I do help my goal is to decrease behavioral euthanasia, which I do on a daily basis. But it does get even frustrating when the people that are intending to do good things and they'll close away solutions. That's almost as frustrating. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not almost. Animal abusers are. Yeah, that's got to stop. Laws have got to be changed. One of my goals, what I wanted to be was a lawyer, an animal rights lawyer, and I'd still like to be getting a little bit old for that, but I would still like to be because I think they can accomplish a lot. Laws need to be changed and they need to be enacted and enforced. That's starting to come around, which is good in some countries, which is good. That's what I would like. My goal is to spread awareness on cognitive behavioral therapy for dogs so that it can just be out there in mainstream dog behavior. And then I can move forward. I'm not, like you said, the whole social media, I started it so late. It was never important to me. I never needed it. I had a successful business with hundreds of clients a year, just on referral and veterinarian referral and referral from rescues. So I don't have a huge social media following. So I'm looking to collaborate with experts and industry experts to learn cognitive behavioral therapy and to share it. And then I can move on to doing what I actually really want to do, which is more on the animal advocacy. So again, it wasn't really planned. It just became what I do. And I think that the way anybody, well, I shouldn't say that, but can, and a lot of times I don't sleep at night, but people can get through it is knowing that you are helping, whatever level that is. So not everybody has to take in dogs, not everybody has to rescue dogs, but there could be other ways that people can help. And that could just simply be spreading awareness, connecting, collaborating, donating, sharing, or there's lots of rescue organizations that need the behind the scenes. You don't always have to be, or any animal, there's groups. And I just think that is a way that people learn to, and some people just, they don't want to see it, but they care. They want to help, but they don't necessarily want to see it. It is tough seeing it. It is tough when I go to the countries or getting in the dogs. I don't do as much rescue anymore as I used to, but I voluntarily go down and immerse myself into the places where there are rescues. So you see it hands-on, and every day is different. You wake up and you don't know. But as far as what's really beginning to piss me off is just not even cultures, just your well-bred university student abusing an animal just to put it on social media or just for fun. Like it, and then nothing happens to them because they're from some family that they're going to some university that doesn't want to have that reputation. Those people need to get their shit together. There's no excuse for it on anybody, but that's pissing me off.
They say that people who abuse animals, there's no hope for them. Have you found that that's not the case, that people were abusive and then they turned around and became great advocates for animals? Or
well, I don't rehab people. My clients will often say to me, I can use this on my kids. Yep, you can. Or, hey, do you train husbands? No, I don't. No. And I don't rehab people. I have worked with social workers, and I have worked with a particularly interesting woman who had a social work at a university, and she took the dogs. She headed the program where they took the dogs from the shelter into the prison. Mm-hmm. And the prisoners worked with the dogs. So that was really interesting. I think people can be rehabbed. I think that it needs to be taken more seriously when people abuse animals, whether or not they can be rehabbed. But I think it needs to be taken a lot more seriously because they're most likely going down a bad road. Mm-hmm. It's not going to get any better.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with a family that was not nice to animals, and it was very tough to watch. It was very tough to be around. They saw them as just tools for the environment. We had a raccoon problem, so let's get a dog to chase them off. We had a rat problem, so let's get a cat to chase them off. But other than that, it was, when they meow or bark to get food, it was like, get away from me. That's usually how they did that. I mean, and I know it's a lack of education. So how do you train a dog to be with somebody who is completely uneducated?
Oh, I don't think level of education has to do with their ability to read and understand and be kind to dogs.
Right.
It's interesting your point, what you were saying about your family, because that is just, they were using animals to solve a problem. Other people might say, well, other people would put down traps where the animals are just on those sticky piece of paper and they end up starving and dehydrating to death. So are those people any worse or better? It's just it's how people choose to solve a problem because they're infested. Right. For example, the example you used with mice or raccoons. That's an interesting, I think that probably did affect you as a child and probably did make you want to be kinder to animals and understand them better and how they all work with each other and symbiotically. But the kids I was talking about is the ones who intentionally put a firecracker in a dog's mouth and tape the mouth shut, and then put it on social media. To me, that's a lot different than what your family did. It just is different. Very different.
Wow. I mean, you just telling me that, I just want to go out there and just hurt this person. Yeah. I want to do the same thing. I do. I want to take an M80, put it in this person's mouth and see, like, how do you like it? Yeah. I know that comes from pain. I know a lot of people like this, like I've done. It's like, I know that they hurt, so they want to hurt animals to make them feel like that. But at the same time, that's one step away from being, a psychopath.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. It just doesn't seem to have any relationship with wealth or education. It's just purely being a narcissistic asshole.
Wow.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just felt like I just got hit by Canelo.
Yeah, that wouldn't be fun. So I think that I would just like to see the industry be more open-minded to solutions and people who have the ability to spread awareness and make solutions. And, you take someone like Ricky Gervais, who I have to say, I don't follow people. I've never been a follower of TV and celebrities and movie stars and stuff, but, he's taking his popularity and using it for good. He does a lot of good for animals. He changes mindsets, and he's fun, and he drinks beer, and he's got a cool dog. He lets his dog on his couch. Like, to me, I know people don't like this and that about him, but he's using his presence and celebrity status. I think he's using it well. I think I have roots back where he comes from, where he lives. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, you interrupt me. What'd you say?
I connect a lot with him. He doesn't have kids, and the area that he's from in the UK is, I have relatives there, and, we drink the same beer, and his view on dogs and living with dogs, he's just free-spirited that way. And I think he's doing a lot for the dog world. And I think if everybody just had, it doesn't have to be my passion, his happens to be, but if everybody who had the ability to help just had a passion, had a mission, had a passion, had something, didn't even have to be as extensive as advocates. But if you just had something that was important to you and used whatever skill set that you have to help that, everybody would be, I think that would be a good rehab for a lot of people that are lost or doing mean, bad things. Just, I mean, it's easy for me to say, get something good to do, go do it. It sounds kind of like Little Miss America saying, oh, I hope everybody's happy and the world is fine, which is not me at all. I'm a realist. Right. But I do think that there's a lot of people that have the opportunity to do a lot more than they're doing, including myself. Yeah. We all can do more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I had Ricky Gervais's, dare I say, cachet, I would definitely be speaking out for animals a heck of a lot more than I am right now, for sure. You know, that's what I loved about Bob Barker before he retired and passed on. Yeah. You know, spay and neuter your pets. That's it. It's a constant reminder. Spay and neuter your pets. And
that's crazy, That was forever ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was saying it back then.
Maybe that person needed to hear that. What was I going to do? Oh, yeah, I need to spay or neuter my pet. That helps.
Yes. Yeah. That and there's the prime example of what I was saying. That I know. It's so funny. Bob Barker, and you think back on that, and he was saying spay and neuter way back then. He's what, almost 100? Is he almost 100?
I think so.
And there's still a problem with spay and neuter.
Yeah.
But then Ricky Gervais is saying all their... Yeah. The Drew Carey. Drew Carey's his... Yeah. His person now. So, it says... Yeah.
I know that, so something irritating, because then we're going to go back to something more pleasant. The Korean meat market, you had mentioned that. Mm-hmm. Is that every city that has that, or is that just only in Korea?
Oh, I call it that just because the dogs I've worked with, because the rescue org in my area brings them up from a certain place because she lived down there and has connections with rescue orgs down there. So that's just my experience. There are people that are far more knowledgeable on it than I am. I've just worked with some of the dogs that have come up from there. And I think it's wrong and it's horrible. And there's definitely animal advocacy groups and there's great rescue organizations there. And there's people that risk their lives. They'll just go in and cut those nets down and the dogs all run free. It's crazy there. Yeah, it's crazy there. There's people doing really good things. There's lots of people doing really good things. There's people that kick ass in the animal advocacy world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, somebody asked me, they said, somebody who went to this really interesting discussion. She was my girlfriend at the time. Now she's my best friend who knows everything about me, all my dirty secrets, and she's still my friend. So
I have that boyfriend, that ex-boyfriend. I have that guy.
Oh, you do you?
I have that equivalent. Yes.
Do you have is this the van guy or the brain surgeon? No, the brain surgeon didn't work out.
Neither. No. Okay. Brain surgeons just every so often we'll talk. I have a lot of exes. That's all different. But I tend to be friends with all of them. I tend to. There's very few that I'm not. But no, this one is exactly like yours. And people think, there's no way you could still be friends and that close of friends and not be together. It's like, it is. It's true. You can do it.
I'm great friends with her husband. Her husband's an amazing guy. And he's a very good friend of mine.
Yeah,
he's such a sweetheart. He's such a sweet guy. You see him with an animal, and you can't help but fall in love with him. Now he's a good-looking dude. He looks like Hugh Jackman. He's a good-looking dude, and he's fit. He's just kind man, and so for me not to get along with him, something really off about me. But
and you want her to be with somebody good.
Oh, absolutely.
You want that for her.
Yeah, they're both Mr. and Mrs. Dr. Doolittle. So
that's awesome.
They really are.
I love them already. I love them already.
When we lived together in Philadelphia, she would get so mad at me because I would spend a huge chunk of my time going from different parts in the city, rescuing all kinds of cats. I'd find baby cats that were covered in fleas, put them in the bathtub, get them off, and then find them homes and stuff like that. But she'd get mad at me. This is Mrs. Doolittle. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know some people don't, but I love all animals.
I love all animals. I know people are funny. They think I don't like cats because it's just, I mean, I can't really be, people aren't going to hire me there are cat trainers. It's just not what I gravitated to. It's probably less busy of a profession. I can't be a polar bear trainer because people shouldn't own polar bears or be trying to train them. If they're trying to train a polar bear, that's a bad thing. So it's dogs. But I was just adopted by a cat, a cat that was sort of in the neighborhood and had a really crappy, shitty home that they didn't let her in the winter and they didn't care for her. So she picked this little happy family that we live in. So she's now part of our family.
Nice. How long?
Yeah, I love her. It's cool having a cat around. I've had her for maybe a month or two now.
Month or two?
She's cute. Named her Friday. She's cool. It's cool having a cat around. They're really different.
They are. They definitely are. I want to get settled at some point where I can have a cat and a dog. But I also want to be a falconer as well. So.
That is so cool. Yeah, that's good for you. That's a really interesting skill.
Yeah, because I went to, it was a belated birthday present. It was in October. I went to a place in southern New York called in Gresham, falconry excursions. And this guy, he's been studying it ever since he was a kid because his father was into it and he passed on the knowledge. So he showed us a few things and I fell in love. I absolutely fell in love.
It is
these
really
things are
cool.
so majestic. I'm going to post it on my YouTube channel. I'm going to get all the videos together and probably have it up by the end of this week or next week. But just so beautiful, so beautiful. And you think with all the feathers on them, they're huge. But that one owl he had, you can just take your finger and just most of your pointer finger will just disappear. You know, it's just so much feather. But then he brought out a black eagle. Oh my God. Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah, they're majestic and they're smart. And I don't know a lot about birds, but I really am intrigued by that skill. I guess it's a profession as well.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to describe heaven on earth, what would it look like? Would it be a huge tract of land with all the animals you want and birds and like what would heaven on earth be?
Owning that island would be good. Having an island with, well, I mean, that's a loaded question, especially now. But if I were to, I think just a place that animals could live in their own environment and be free.
Yeah.
Do their thing.
Now, how close did you come to living in America and then making it your permanent place to go? Like, how was it very close, or like having dual citizenship? Was that something you wanted, or?
I'm not sure I really thought about it at the time. I was just kind of there. I think the States has beautiful geography. I did a lot of rock climbing when I was younger in the States as well, in New Mexico. I like the West Coast, Oregon and California. I like the States, I like the geography. I like Canada just because I'm from here and it's comfortable for me. So profession-wise, I guess to be able to legally work, etc., which I've always had to do, which is fine. It just seemed easier to come to Canada. But no, I like the States. Where are you?
I'm in upstate New York, so I'm very close to Albany, about an hour away.
Oh yeah.
And I grew up in Albany area. So now I'm back after 50 something years. So
so you're not that far from Toronto, really?
Huh? Yeah, no, I love Toronto. Toronto is one of my favorite cities.
Yeah, I love Toronto. It's a great city.
Why do you like it? So we'll compare notes. How come you like it?
I guess it's a comfort zone because I used to go there as a rebel teenager or tweenager. I used to pop into Toronto. it was sort of my stomping ground. And I like going back there. It's comfortable for me. I know it, but it's vibrant. It's multicultural. It's cosmopolitan. I like that. I think it's great. Before COVID, I went back on a regular basis. I have been to New York, but not for a long, long time. And I love that city too. I love big cities. I do. People think because of what I do, I would be a country girl, but I don't. I like urban environments. Where I'm living now is probably one of my smallest cities I've lived in. It's more like a big town. It's very flat in Saskatchewan. You can watch your dog run away for 5 days straight. Still see your dog. It's like so flat. It's the prairies, right? The prairies. It's like,
right.
You know, it's kind of the joke. But I like big cities.
Is it susceptible to tornadoes up in that area, or do you get really big snowstorms?
Heavy winds. We get heavy winds. We get lots of snow. It can get to -40. It happens in the winter on a regular basis. Yeah. 7-minute frostbite warnings. Yep, it can get really, really cold. Lots of, but it's so sunny. It's so sunny here. I love the sun. I love the sun. So it's a bit of a.
You just said -40.
Yeah, it gets to -50 with the wind chill. When the Saskatchewan Roughriders are football play, everyone's out, and it's like, I remember the first year I moved here, which was 8 years ago. They were in the finals, and it got up to -50 or down to -50, I guess, with the wind chill, and everybody's outside in the street drinking. Oh. It's hardcore. It's pretty funny. Well, it's not funny. It sucks a lot. It takes you like half an hour to get ready to go for a 5-minute walk with your dog.
I think my Scottish side would love it, but I know my Puerto Rican side would not love it one bit.
No, I'd rather be in Puerto Rico. I like the heat. I like the sun. I do.
Yeah.
But it's the West Coast in Canada is warmer. It doesn't get the cold temperatures, but it can be sunny. I mean, with climate change and everything else, it's so all over the map. But it's really sunny in Saskatchewan.
Now, speaking of climate change, have you witnessed the change in climate from where you are? Because I know when I was a kid, the winters would definitely get below zero quite a bit. And it would get like the winters around November, December would be in the 20s and the teens, and then the minus and that kind of thing. But have you witnessed global change from where you are?
Mm-hmm. And you get flooding. Yeah, there's changes that way. And if it doesn't get as cold, and also, of course, I always go back to the animals. So they change what they do. And if there's places in Canada where it hasn't frozen in the winter where it would normally go below zero, and it hasn't, and then you're going to get more of a problem with animals that were, I guess, along the lines of ticks and fleas and those sort of insects that would die off in the winter, and they don't. There's lots of effects that it has when it doesn't go below zero in Canada in places that it normally would. So that's just one example of many things. You'd get runoffs and lots of flooding where normally it would freeze. Is that the kind of thing that you meant? Stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's strange to watch what's going on. It's just, I believe in weather change. I believe that we're changing. The weather's, the world changes no matter what we're going to do. But it's pretty difficult. But I need to get back to a few things, and that is,
sure.
You were saying about behavior. Now, I had a dog named Oso.
Oh, bear.
And hopefully you can.
That's bear in Spanish, right? That's bear in Spanish?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Huge dog. It was half shepherd, half Great Dane.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
It was immense. Rescued it from Santorini, Greece. There's plenty of dogs to rescue. Why I chose that dog from Greece, I have no idea, but I know.
Good for you.
I loved it. And so it was a great dog to have. And even for the size and everything, it's a great dog to have. When I go to work, because I had separation anxiety, I would put it in the doggy daycare. Did really well in doggy daycare. But one day coming back from doggy daycare, the dog completely changed. It got to the point where I'd take it to the dog park and have it play with the other dogs. And it actually got more aggressive. And it got to the point where I actually had to put a muzzle on the dog. And then everyone kept saying, this one dog trainer, she's the best, she's the best, she's the best. And was charging somewhere north like $150 an hour for behavioral specialty. And she had no idea what she was doing. None. So I'm at a loss here. Like, what do I do? What do I do? Because this dog went from being very playful and kind and everything to being this dog that can potentially harm other dogs because its size and it's everything. And it just became this dog to the point where like it started attacking other people, which it never did. So I don't know what happened. Can you I still don't have an explanation. Like I still don't know what happened. Did something happen with
Oso
the facility?
2 or 6 at the time that this change happened, or neither? How old was Oso?
Oh, just under a year.
Oh, just under a year. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's quintessential what I get for a client. So what happened was the trainer that you hired was using conditioning methods. So probably some kind of positive reinforcement like a treat or something. And that's effective under 6 months. And it can be effective over 6 months. It's proven successful. But when you get that adolescent stage, and when I say adolescent, I should clarify that's usually change in behavior happens between 6 and 8 months. And then people kind of start noticing it around 8 or 9, or then it develops. I mean, that's the most common time that dogs go to shelters or that people are starting to feel challenged. So that would be a common change in behavior. And that's when that's when the light bulb, that's when it should be common in mainstream dog training for people to switch to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what I've created and designed. But if I'm sure that trainer is extremely good at conditioning methods, it just wasn't, conditioning methods wouldn't address that. Possibly counter conditioning or classical conditioning, but it still takes the approach of reinforcements and associative desensitization. That is just super common for what I would deal with. It's just like, there's a couple examples. I mean, it's like people maturing and changing. They don't want to go to the same bar that they went to when they were 19 as when they're 40. So you could view it that way. His perception of the dog park, maybe his perception of the dogs there, just it's all about the dog's perception. And that's what you have to deal with. And that's what we have to work with. And we can't just tell the dog that he can't feel the way he feels. And we can't tell him that he has to like everything that he's doing. And he's allowed to change his opinion. But on the same note, did you lose me?
Thank you. I mean, the beauty about technology is like I can talk to you, at this point right now and have a great conversation, and but it's at the mercy of somebody else. So
the techno lords.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's a good way to put it. So let's see. So we were talking about my dog also, and how it just behaved after a year, and the traditional way of doing things is the treat reaction. But you say there's a cognitive way of doing things with pets and animals. So what would that be? What would be? How would you have trained my dog to not attack other dogs, and like what would be the behavior things that you would look for?
Well, I mean, I obviously can't train a dog on a podcast, right. But the difference between conditioning methods is conditioning methods are designed to teach right from wrong. So they use reinforcements. However that trainer does that, they're all different. But and some only use positive and some are balanced. And there's a whole world out there on that. But so it's designed to encourage wanted behavior and discourage unwanted behavior. Cognitive behavioral therapy is designed to change perception, to change behavior. So you can think of it with all sorts of things. You can think of it when rehabilitating a criminal, or nutrition, health-related, phobias. They use it for all sorts of things. So it's a different approach, and the approach teaches skills outside the negative situation or scary situation or whatever it happens to be, to change the mindset. And then what's really important with dogs is to change the mindset of the owner's ability to manage a situation and to understand them and get that bond. And that is not done at all through reinforcements. It can be. It can be during puppyhood. So it's not saying that other methods are not bonding. It's just a different type of bond because we're harnessing their cognitive skills. What happens when dogs get 6, 7, 8 months old? Their cognitive skills kick in. They have those at puppy. So they have memory, and they can think, and they can work things through to a certain extent. Normally when they do that, it works in our favor. When they start getting older, just like with kids, sometimes they start to question things. Wonder why they're going to do something. Do they have to like something? Do they have to wear something? Do they have to share? What happens if they don't? What if I don't want to? What happens? So they start to, so we as people with children or parents, I guess that's called parenting, they would just switch the way that they parent. They're still their same parent and they're still the same family, but they switch the way that they're working with that child, more to harness those skills, to give them options, to give them better ways of thinking, to allow them to work things through. And so they're not necessarily working with them in that moment to encourage or discourage a behavior. They're building skills outside. So that's why my methodology, which is called UPWARD methodology, it stands for Urban People with Adopted and Rescued Dogs, UPWARD. That's why it follows cognitive behavioral therapy, because there's principles that CBT follows, and my methodology adheres to those principles as opposed to conditioning. So again, one's not better than the other. But based on what you're telling me about Oso, we would change his perception of his need to do that behavior in the park to achieve his goal. And if he ends up telling us he just doesn't even want to go to the park, as a dog caregiver, you would, well, my clients do all sorts of things. Sometimes they just, okay, we won't go. Other times, well, I have 2 other dogs that want to go. So then we work with the dog more in the park so that the option isn't to nail the other dog's ass. It's to go off on their own. Just like people, we might not want to be at a dinner party, but we can't run around beating everybody up, and we have to manage ourselves. So it really depends on the situation and the dog and my client. But the dog has to know that they have options and know that they can think for themselves and make those decisions, which is not what happens under the age of 6 months as much or to the same extent.
Right. Now, I might have been cruel for doing this. I don't know. Again, it's all about awareness and stuff. But I was a dog walker when I lived in New York City. That was one of my many jobs
cool.
I had. And it was fun. I had a couple
cool.
favorites that were just, I still miss them to this day. But the one dog, Elaine, golden doodle, energy, strength of a human being, playfulness as a kid. And I think the dog was like maybe 3 years old, but well behaved. Sit, stay, everything. However, Elaine loved to chase squirrels. Loved to chase squirrels. And I would get it to the point where the dog wouldn't bite the squirrel, but it would go after the squirrel, and it would kind of be its treat. Like, okay, stay here, don't do this, don't do that. But its treat would be to go chase a squirrel, and we would go chase it. Now, was I instilling a bad behavior, or that's just what they do?
Yeah. My clients always, because there's so many rules in the dog world now. Everybody's got a rule. Every trainer's got a rule. When my clients ask me, should or shouldn't I do something? My answer is commonly, never like to say all the time to anything, but commonly, did you feel like you had calm manageability? Did you feel like your dog was that at any given time you could maybe change that? So you said that you did have some sits and stays or whatever you did before. And then when you said to go get the squirrel, you went together and it was fun. If something changed, like a child went by on a bicycle in between you and you had to just, maybe stop that for a moment so that she didn't barrel over the child on the bicycle. Did you have the ability to do that? Yep. I could have waited till the kid went by on the bike and then chase. Oh, fine. So your dog's listening to you. You're having fun. It's what you're doing together. But you have the ability. It's just like, again, with children, where you're not going to stop them from going to places and stop them from doing things. But when they're there at a restaurant or somewhere, they do have to listen and get with the program, but they can still go and do stuff and be kids. I don't know. Does that answer?
Yeah.
I never tell my.
Yeah.
It's all about them having the skills that they can do more with their dog, not less.
Right. Exactly.
That's the whole thing. We want them to more freedom, more time with your dog, be able to take your dog camping, or I don't know what you do in New York.
No,
but
it's
whatever you do,
Yeah, and it's funny.
You want to be able to do that and feel comfortable.
There's a huge difference in why I see people walking their dogs in different countries. So a lot of people, when I lived in New York City, there were a lot of people that were walking the dogs on leashes, and the dogs were not paying attention. The dogs were doing their own thing. But when I lived in Berlin, hardly anybody had any leashes whatsoever. The dogs stayed by the side. They didn't run off anywhere. There could have been a squirrel. The dog was not going anywhere. It was really it was a massive difference. And there's other parts. I thought it was just Berlin, but it was also in Munich. A couple other places that I witnessed that the dogs were just by the side, weren't going anywhere. Now, is it because they spend more time with their dogs? Is it because the people in New York City don't, or what's your opinion?
I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that. I would say it's the norm to use a leash in New York, so people rely on it. And if you can rely on something and it works, but using the dog's brain is always good. That's the only tool I rely on, is the dog's brain. So I would say that they taught the dogs that. I mean, there's people that do walk around with their dogs off leash and they have complete control. But maybe because it's not accepted, that people don't go to that extent to train it, because it's not legal to walk around New York with their dogs off leash. Although you can see a lot of people walking with their dogs on leash, and the leash isn't doing the work. The dog, they technically wouldn't need the leash, but they put it on because they're legally required. It's interesting that you bring that up, because in Canada, on the West Coast in BC, now maybe not all of BC, but Vancouver, Victoria, they have a lot of off-leash dog areas. So you could just be riding down, one of these multi-kilometer bike paths and running paths, and then all of a sudden there'll be a sign, the next 2 kilometers is leash-free. And there might be a road over there. There might be a parking lot. There might be a kid's playground. And if you're going to stay on that bike path, or you're just going through the leash free, and the people are expected to manage their dog well and not have their dog chase somebody on a bicycle, and it works. It works very well. They also have, it just could be like a small area in a little community parkette. And it's not known as off leash. It actually is. It's a legal off leash area, and it's a very small area. Whereas where I am, and more so in Toronto, they're all fenced. Now there's areas people will go because the community accepts it as off leash, but more so they have these set, structured, fenced off areas. And where I am, there's relatively very few. The city 2 hours north of me has an off-leash area that is more like a hiking through the trees. I like that, but it's still a structured area. You still have to drive to it. It's not just, right in like a community downtown area. Toronto has some So it's interesting because you would have to have your dog more with the program. Better trained is such a, just bonded and more with the program in order to be able to just take your dog off leash to a community area where there's, a road over there and a kid's playground over there.
Yeah.
So I think it's more just what people are used to and what the dogs are used to and what their expectations are.
Sorry. So I saw in your bio that I saw the Yulin Festival. Were you there when it was going on?
No, I've never been there.
Okay, thank God.
I've just worked with the dogs from there. Yeah. No, I don't know if I'd do well. I mean, again, you have to just maintain yourself and do what you can do. And I completely admire the rescuers there. Holy smokes. But no, I just have worked with a lot of the dogs who have made it to Canada. And my clients have them and my clients have adopted them. And it's amazing. They're great. The rescue orgs are great.
Yeah, because I saw videos of that. And I was one point walking around the wet markets for a little bit. And I was floored. I was floored by it. I mean, it doesn't need to happen, It does not. There's no need to have this wet market around. I mean, you're selling peacocks, you're selling all kinds of animals that, like, this shouldn't be the case. But, yeah. What was that experience like for you?
How long ago were you what was it like for you? You tell me. I find that really interesting.
I think it was around 96, 97, right around the time when Great Britain handed over China mainland to China. I was around that time. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big time. So there were lots of different animals just hanging there. I think, that would be. But like you said, it's all part of what we learn as we go through life, and how do we feel about that? And wow, would we do the same thing today when put in that environment as we would have decades ago? And how would we be different about it? Sometimes I look back. I mean, I was in Spain when I was in my early 20s, and I learned about the bullfighting. I really, and the running with the bulls, and I didn't really know that much about it. And I look back now thinking, wow, why did I not have more of an opinion on that then? Or why did I not? But I think it probably did help formulate. But I felt like I should have done more. And then I've only more recently, the past decade or so, learned more about the galgos and how they're treated in Spain. I think for me, a lot of it is, again, getting back to that tradition, is how they're killed and why they're killed. So if they're like the ones, the tradition in the Yulin market, or for those ones who kill the dogs, that the more pain that the animal endures during the killing, the more money they can get for it, or the more aphrodisiac qualities it has. I mean, there's all sorts of things, whether that's true or not true. It's not a valid or justification, and it's grounded in, it's that how an animal is killed should be a big defining factor on whether, and if the animal's in any pain at all. Like you said, hunting, some people are, yeah. I think, again, it just gets back to what we were talking about before with the tradition. And why are they doing it? And is the animal suffering? And what's the purpose and why? And
yeah, I mean, there's no reason. It's like I think the last time there was anybody witnessed a beheading was 1903. So it was just over 100 years ago was the last actual beheading. And so we need to evolve and get away from cruelty. We need to evolve and get away from, finding beheadings fascinating. We need to get away from that. I'm glad we are, but we also need to do that and treat other animals as if, there was a story I watched the TV show because I wanted to find out whether or not I normally don't watch TV. I don't have a TV. I just look at shit through my computer and stuff. Even my sports, even my boxing, I watch through the computer. There's a story on the TV show called The King, the Mayor King side or something like that. It's got I forgot the actor's name, just like you with memory. I forgot the name. There was a story where the Lakota made the dogs a part of the tribe. They were family members. They were actual family members. Okay. They walked with the people everywhere. And so when the colonizers came in and took over, and they put all the people on the boats to go out, the dogs actually went into the water to follow them. And of course, they all drowned because they all kept wanting to be loyal to the people that it was basically family. It was family. But we don't have that. It's either our survival and that's it. And we're in a much better state of mind where that's not the case. And that shouldn't be the case, at all. Like, animals are here to help us, and we're here to take care of them. We're not here for their meat and for their pleasure and for anything. They're here to help us, and we take that environment that they live in and we put lead in the bottom of the ocean. So these beautiful creatures have mercury inside their body, which they shouldn't. There's trash everywhere. It's like, what the hell is wrong with us? What is wrong with us that we are treating our environment, ourselves, and especially animals? I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox. I can talk about it for hours.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's great. We don't have the right to do that. We don't have the right. And we don't have the right to tell people that. I mean, you're taking on a very large scale. Absolutely. I mean, the oceans is a huge topic. It's disgusting what we're doing, and air pollution. But there was one point of what you were speaking there that I found interesting, where people might be, their area might be flooded, or they're in a tragedy or a hurricane, and they need to leave. And there's organizations that come in and help these people get out. They need to be able to take their pet. They need to, people just, sometimes they won't leave. You'll see them floating on a log with their dog, and they just won't leave. And that is so beautiful and heart-wrenching. And it is now coming around where there's organizations that take people with the pets and to help. And again, this is all the larger scale issues and what we're doing. I talk somewhat regularly with a woman who's high up in IFAW. She does incredible things. She's a veterinarian. And there are organizations that are doing really, really good work, and I'd like to be more involved. My book, actually, not to get off topic, but my book just came out. It's just coming out this week with the second edition. But it actually has won an award and made more of an influence in the animal advocacy than dog training. And really, that's what I'm all about. Mm-hmm. That's really what it is. Where cognitive behavioral therapy comes from is, like I keep saying, to decrease behavioral euthanasia and to allow us to bring those dogs into our homes. Mm-hmm. I just feel like I would like that to just become mainstream and to get on some of these larger topics that you're talking about and these larger problems, and work with organizations that are doing amazing work. There's a lot of animal advocacy groups that are making a lot of difference. And I just find there's so much wrong, yet there's also a lot we can all do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the thing is, me personally, I think it's because, it would require us to change. And if we need to change, that means there's something wrong with us, then we can't accept that. And that means we've got to look in the mirror to see what happens. And most people don't want to change. That's
You're exactly right. People want progress.
Right, but they don't want
people want things to progress, but they don't want change. Right. And they don't want things to change. And they don't want to have to admit that, and this is what I'm dealing with the dog world right now. Regular dog people contact me and hire me every day. Mm-hmm. And they've been told by their veterinarian, they've been told by other trainers, your dog can't be fixed, or you need to euthanize or surrender. And then we get to, why isn't this out there? because changing the mindset of the norm, challenging the status quo, disrupting the status quo, or having people say, okay, you know what, we need to incorporate other ways is challenging. It's very difficult. I didn't learn what I know in the same path that other people did, which is why I don't have the same formula. And that can be tricky for people.
Yeah.
And that can go right up to the topics and issues that you were talking about, is for government to change and for laws and traditions. And you're talking some organizations that are grounded in, the infamous Old Boys Club and money. And it's tough to change perception on a small scale. For me, dogs are the most willing creatures. Well, probably all animals aside from humans, to change their perception and to want to do the right thing and to want to learn and to bond. And they absolutely do.
Yeah.
Humans fight everything.
Yeah. I mean, my doctor, well, she gave me a clean bill of health. She says I'm big, so
that's awesome.
But she said that she is amazed how much she tells people, look, you're basically on death's door. You're in your 50s, you got this, you got that, and I can give you medication, but at the same time, you've got to be willing to you've got to be willing to not eat fried food. You got to be willing, it's okay once a week, it's okay every now and then, it's okay, but every single day, and they just would rather have the medication. They'd rather suffer with what they have and take the medication, even though the medications, they have serious complaints about the medication, but they're not willing to do what it takes to change that and the environment itself to actually make the permanent change happen, which is bizarre.
Oh my God, that's such a great comparison. Yeah. That is so great. It is. Yeah, people want solutions, but they don't want to have to implement them.
Right.
And people want to say all the right stuff. Oh, I want to bond with my dog, or, I want to get healthier, but then they don't want to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I compare a lot my profession often, and other people do as well. Sorry, I just had to see what my dog was doing, with a nutritionist or doctors. Because we're changing mindset first, right, and how we approach doing that and how people learn and how we can get them to, it's almost, people can do cognitive behavioral therapy in a family way, where within their daily life with their families. It's sort of the example I use is that honey-do list. So you make it seem like it's their idea to do it. And that can be the same with how a nutritionist might work with someone if their goal is to lose 50 pounds. If they really don't know right from wrong, like they don't know that an apple is better than deep fried food, to use your example, then often, which is the same as conditioning methods with dogs, if you just explain it to them and tell this is what would be better and this is what would be worse, then they just choose the better. That's great. That's the same with dogs if they want that. But if they're already thinking and learning, they've already got something set in their head, or maybe their bad eating habits come from anxiety or come from stress, that's when they know that an apple is better than a bag of potato chips. But they're choosing the bag of potato chips anyway because they feel like they need to. So you have to just let that go and deal with the root of the problem, which is the anxiety or the stress. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. So once the light bulb goes on and they see that change in their dog or within themselves, they're more likely to change holistically. So you'll often hear people say, well, their goal was to just lose 50 pounds. But once they changed their whole mindset, once they changed their whole approach, and they saw small improvements, like their hair was healthier, or they slept better, or they might still have not lost 50 pounds, but their nails are better, or whatever. Then all of a sudden they're going to start exercising too. And then that leads to losing some weight, which, okay, now, and then everything works as a whole. And then you get all these changes. That's what I love so much about cognitive behavioral therapy. And when I was a child, I think I resonated with the people that didn't focus so much on just right there. And they got to learn to, and people, even a lot of people, they just like people that get to know you as a whole, which again, why your podcast's so great, because you're getting to know people as a whole. It's not just talking about one topic. And people like that. They want to have a holistic understanding. And cognitive behavioral therapy, that's why I can't give specific advice, because as we start applying it and as we start building these skills and as we start building a bond with the dog differently, this dog might do something different than this dog. And this dog will go in this direction and this, and then we adapt and adjust, but we have those skills and those tools and the formula to do that. That's why I think a lot of solutions, people just want quick answers, what you were getting back to, and they just want that quick answer and they want it to happen now. I think changing the mindset on a lot of things, a lot of issues, to just be more holistic and open-minded and work through things and enjoy that process, enjoy that journey.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, is that with my Dr. Dolittle friend, when we were living together in Pennsylvania, she had a cat named Plume. A really interesting cat. I mean, all the other cats were friendly, but Plume, I was really into beer then. I mean, totally into beer. I knew everything about beer, left, right, up and center. My IPAs, and I liked to drink at that point. But the cat would always run away from me. Well, the other cats were friendly, fun, but this cat just, was going to stay away from me. But then I decided to go back into martial arts. I decided to go back and train, and I stopped drinking. That's what happens when I start training, because I only, alcohol, like all the progress that you want to make training, it will stunt it. Like you got to make sacrifices. You can't be an elite athlete and drink as much as, like 2 or 3 beers a day. You can't do it. So I decided to give it up, and almost immediately, the cat was approaching me, climbing on my lap. So I think we can behaviorally change the dog in some ways, but I think the dog or the cat has a direct relationship to the environment that we're in. So if the dog is acting funny, well, that might be because of somebody might be drinking too much, it might be too hostile, might have lost a job, and it's going to be a hostile environment. That's the case as well, correct?
Yes, getting to the reason for the problem is, and people sometimes make it really a big deal when it could be something very simple or small. It's just something that's important to that dog or to that animal, or important to that animal in that environment or with that person, because we change as well.
Right.
How we are in one environment and our expectations of that environment are different in another one. So if we went into a bar and everybody was drunk and screaming and singing and having a good time and jumping around, we'd be like, yeah, it's a bar.
Right.
But if we go into a library and everybody's doing that, we're our same person, but, right. We're okay. We're uncomfortable now. How we deal with that uncomfortableness, some people would leave. Some people would get upset. Some people would complain. And then let's say we found out that that library is being used for a movie set. Okay, now all of a sudden we understand why. Right. It's not what we expected. Then we're going to behave differently again. So you do have to figure out why. You can't just tell people or animals that they have to be a certain way. And sometimes it is feeding off of the person, and sometimes it's just something completely different. And just from doing what I do for 3 decades and working with people, and that's such a big difference. When you're working with people, you have to know the questions to ask, because I'll think, okay, based on that dog's general personality, disposition, upbringing, that would be out of character, or that would be in character. Like, so at that age, not so much out of character. Could have, that's something I deal with all the time. But sometimes a client will, it's just like people. It's like, that's a little bit out of character for that person. It doesn't make that behavior wrong. Just makes it perhaps out of character for what would normally. And that gets into psychology. So you do have groups, and not everybody's a robot and fits into these groups, but there's some behavior. And then that's when I would ask different questions. People commonly think if I ask if a routine changed or they'll think big routines like their work, but it could just be something small that someone came to visit and they don't normally have somebody visit at that time or that person, or maybe the visitor slept in a room that nobody commonly sleeps in. And it might the dog just might, or maybe they took their area rug to go get dry cleaned and the area rug's not there. And normally that dog would sleep on that area rug. Sometimes it could just be very small things and sometimes it's really large. I think people blame themselves a lot and blame other people. And we just need to bring logic and common sense back into a lot of things and compassion.
But I see that slowly diminishing, though. I mean, not to be a fatalist or a nihilist or anything, but I tend to see that diminishing to some degree. I think people, because of technology, I think people are willingly giving over their freedoms to a device. I mean, and especially with this new thing called Meta now, it's like, oh, you get to go another world and see, like, I'm sorry, I could spend hours looking at a bush and just finding wonderful discoveries, or spending a lot of time with dogs that, have this amazing, like, what's going to replace that? I'm sorry, I don't see Meta as attractive as a dog. I don't, or a cat, or like woods.
Admittedly, I don't know what Meta is. I've never heard of it, but I'm okay with that. But I kind of get the idea of it's like a false world or something.
Yeah. I don't either. And I don't like anything that's like what you and I have, besides boxing and animals, and like technology. It's like, I have no idea. I have no clue. And it's not like I don't want to learn. I truly do want to learn. But for some reason, the last time I did something that involved something technical at this one job I had, I went to turn on the computer and all I did was double click on Google Chrome, and all 3 computers shut down. I have no idea.
That is so me. It's so funny when everyone says with something with tech, that's never happened before. I've never seen that. It's me.
Yeah.
It's like, I have this thing where even these techie girls, really? I have no idea. Never seen that. Technology just gets weird with me, but I have to say, I really enjoy, like, I have my own podcast and I've learned a lot, and it has its benefits too. And meeting people and being on social media more has been something that I have to manage, but has also been, has its benefits as well. It's I guess it's how you use everything.
Well, I see it like a yin and yang. It's light and dark, and the thing what people think it's a really cool symbol, and I think it's an amazing symbol as well. It's what I spiritually look for in my life is ultimately the balance. Like you definitely at times you want more of the dark side, and at times you want more of the light side, but there's got to be that balance that balance each other out. So, but I want to ask about your book and then your podcast. So about your book, just admittedly about I'm writing a book now, obviously fiction, and it's about a werewolf. I think deep down inside I have an abusive personality, because even though at times I love writing the book, at times I get so jazzed because of new ideas. I love that. Other times when I'm stuck, when it's not going well and I got to think of things, I'm calling my book names. I'm calling my book, you've ruined my life. All I think about is you. You don't love me anymore. I treat it like an abusive relationship, which is not. But how was your journey through from start to finish in this book?
A complete nightmare.
So I'm not alone. Okay. Okay.
No, you're not. And I don't think we're alone. I think, the writing a book is, I also write fiction, and I have to say I go into a better mental place when I'm writing fiction. I love writing fiction. And I do kind of, crazy fiction stuff too. It's not, it's not family friendly coffee table. It's not like anything aversive, but it's, kind of Quentin Tarantino-ish, I would say people have compared it to.
Best friend.
Like
You're
that.
My best friend. No arguments. You're my best friend now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my top 3 favorite films of all time was Jaws, Pulp Fiction. Yeah. So definitely Pulp, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulp, yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like that where something sort of comes out. But as far as this book, my book, the reason it was so difficult was because my publisher, I ended up, it's Friesen Press, they're Canadian, and they have a system that I just didn't work with. It was very robotic. The people were always changing. I didn't like their system at all. So I was battling with that. But also I was battling with my industry and learning about my industry. So I had been successful with what I do for quite a lot of years and had been applying it to clients and working one-on-one with clients. And I loved that world. It was great because I'm learning so much. And then I decide, okay, I'm going to put this into a book and get it out there. And all of a sudden I'm getting more well-known. I moved to the city that I'm in now and getting myself out there more, teaching it more, getting more referrals from veterinarians, which of course competitors and the other people in the industry, which I'd never really dealt a lot with prior. I just done what I do and it just was good. I mean, I had, like I said, there'd been problems with the larger organizations like SPCS. I was awarded by Humane Society, but there's also, that whole ego that comes in and everything else. So I'm deeply immersed in my profession on a day-to-day basis, working with my clients, and then bringing that over to the book and then bringing the book back to my daily life. And it was just very hard to, I was having clients say to me more and more, I almost put my dog down, or I've been told to, or I'm so frustrated, or I adopted this dog and I've had 3 trainers before you. So my frustration was growing with the necessity. We need change now. Mm-hmm. And I put so much pressure on this book to do it. And really, I look back on this book, and the second edition has made some changes. But I find I need to write a book that just gets to the point more. Gets to the point. I was trying to sort of please everybody with this book. The rescue organizations and the people that adopt and and not say anything wrong, but because I didn't want to push people away, and I still don't. Mm-hmm. I need to collaborate, and I need people to want to learn what I do and to accept it. But on the same note, like you said, there has to be that mindset that's changed, and there has to be the reason to change the mindset and to say it's okay to have more tools in our toolbox. Mm-hmm. Just because we say this is right doesn't mean that's wrong. Right. And so the book just took on this huge, and then partway through, I actually created UPWARD, the word UPWARD, Urban People with Adopted and Rescued Dogs. So I completely changed the book to say, yes, like now it is cognitive behavioral therapy, but that sounds so formal. Let's get a name for it. Let's get, it's UPWARD Dogology. Mm-hmm. So the book is actually called The Art of Urban People with Adopted and Rescued Dogs Methodology, The Art of UPWARD Methodology, which is a very long title. The new book, the second one, focuses more on rescued dogs and changing our perception of them and bringing them. So as I'm learning about myself, and as I'm really learning about cognitive behavioral therapy, and as I'm writing the book and I'm working with people and I'm learning more about the industry, it was just, I got very stressed and sick and overwhelmed. So I think I just need to do a second book now that I feel more on top instead of in it. I feel more like I can see it differently. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that was a far too long answer to your question, but it was a challenge.
No, far from. No, that was far from too long. I think it was actually kind of short personally, but
It was a lot going on.
Yeah. So what? All right. So the book, obviously, I haven't read it. I will be. I can promise you that. And I'm not the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree. I'm really not. I'm really not that bright. Would someone like me be able to understand this book and implement it with my, if I had a dog or something? Like, how do you break it down?
It's not it's not a training manual. Okay. It's more my journey of 3 decades through dog rescue and what I've learned and what to expect from dog rescue and how it's changed. And it actually gets into, as much as it's changed, it's also remained disappointingly stagnant. I talk about some of the volunteer stints I did with spay and neuter clinics. I talk about just the dog world in general, how different people can help. And then by the end, the last couple chapters, I get into how dogs think and learn and cognitive behavioral therapy and the difference between puppies and dogs. I do have a lot on why standard methods fail with these dogs, with adolescent dogs, older dogs, adopted dogs. And that can turn some traditional trainers off. But no, it's not intended for trainers, and it's not intended to train. It's intended to just make people feel like it's not necessarily their fault.
Okay.
If they're failing their dog or they're feeling as though what they thought would happen isn't, you're not alone and you're not failing your dog. It's the system.
Got it.
So some trainers have said, well, you're not, you don't know this, or you're not doing this, or you're not certified in this method. Right. But that doesn't change what I've experienced and what I know and what my clients are telling me. Hundreds of clients. I have veterinarians for clients. So I have people that are very educated in traditional methods. So it's not that people should be blaming themselves. It's that they need to ask the system why. And I know the system's very focused on removing negative methods, which is great. That obviously we don't want aversive negative methods. We also need more than what is currently there. So there was some feedback, well, she hasn't talked about positive correction or positive. It doesn't mean I don't know it. Mm-hmm. I do. I just don't talk about it in my book because it's not what I do and not what the book is about. So some people are looking for something in the book that's not there. And other people are reading the book and just finding what's there is interesting. I guess it's like any book, really. Okay. I guess it's like any book where it depends on what you're looking for, but it's not a training manual. It's not a step-by-step training manual. Okay. It's that we need to change our mindset from always telling dogs right from wrong and what they can and can't do and getting rules and alpha and dominance. And we need to move away from that because we're trying desperately to help these dogs and bring them into our families. And that's going to be challenging if we don't incorporate, in my mind, cognitive behavioral therapy and in my experience. Right. So it comes more from an animal advocacy. Sorry, go ahead.
I tend to, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, I write down a bunch of things and stuff, and you have definitely hit the nail on the head in quite a few things. I thought, okay, I'll write this down, write that down. It's like, wow, you're very forthcoming. I'm so happy about that. And there's some questions I will ask because I feel like I don't want people who are taking their time out of their day to listen to me rant like I'm doing right now, and say, I wish he'd asked that question. I wish he had asked that question. So I want to do them a service. It's like you can say yes or no to any question you want. It's up to you what you want to ask. I just feel like sometimes when I write stuff down, it's like I think the audience might want to hear this. So, is there any regret?
Sure, I totally get that.
Yeah, is there any regret about not having kids?
No.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but I just wanted to make sure that. That if somebody was listening, it's like, yeah, no, she didn't want to have any, but years later, it's like, part of me wants to raise 2 kids, wants to adopt and raise 2 kids because there's so many kids out in the world don't have parents, and I kind of feel like I'm a hypocrite because I want people to adopt and take care of animals, but I feel like there's so many kids who are not wanted. I want to get 2 kids, their brother and sister, and raise them and teach them everything I know. Introduce them to wonderful people like you who help them understand, behaviors of dogs and animals as well, but like introduce them to you and stuff, and so we can have a different perspective of this world. That's what I.
And I agree. Like just because I don't want my own, or I don't regret not having my own, I do really enjoy children, and I work with them a lot because I do family pet training.
Nice.
So I do see them, and I like they're great in a session. Oh my gosh, I'll ask a question, and the parents will be, well, I don't know. What do you think? And the kid will just give me this answer, straightforward, knows the dog, knows the answer. It's great. And it doesn't mean that people who are helping kids, I mean, we could go on forever. Well, if you're bringing in dogs from Korea, shouldn't you be bringing in helping dogs in Canada? Well, I do that too. And I help rescues that are local, and I help rescue. I mean, everyone could go on forever saying somebody should care about this instead of that. Like I said, I don't think everybody has to have the exact same passion I have, but if someone were passionate about helping children or teaching children this, or being a foster dad or brother type thing, go for it.
Yeah.
Whatever your thing is, do your thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just, people can be very, very judgmental. And if somebody decides they don't,
oh my gosh,
they don't want to have kids, and it's like, well, what's the big deal? That's just their choice. That's what they want to do in life. My best friends, they chose not to have kids. So why is that a big deal? They choose to raise animals and treat them as, these kids, these cats as their own. So that's their life. Why is that up for debate?
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I never really. I did want to just say that if people are interested in getting more straight to the point on cognitive behavioral therapy, the podcast is the first season, actually throughout the podcast, and it's got scientific studies if people are more interested in that. And I do interview people that do amazing things in the animal world. So the podcast is probably more straight to the point, but again, it's not a step-by-step training manual.
No. Yeah. Don't have expectations.
Then the book.
It's just your stories more with animals.
Well, it talks about cognitive behavioral therapy and what it is, and the 10 steps. But that also allows people to understand why I can't give, what does your dog do? What do I do when my dog does X behavior?
Mm-hmm.
If I could answer that question, I would be a conditioning reinforcement trainer, because that's what conditioning reinforcement trainers do. Right. But that's not the platform of cognitive. It's not that I don't want to. It's the platform of cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't work that way.
And you had mentioned earlier
about that's what I'm an expert in.
The loss, and you said you would love to be a lawyer. So, so where do you find putting, like, there's many different aspects of your life where you're putting on the cape and saving not only animals but people from themselves. Like, where are you ever going to find time to do this, or is this something you're going to keep putting off, and like maybe one day?
I know. It's true. I guess in my mind, I felt that getting cognitive behavioral therapy, UPWARD Dogology mainstream would happen quicker. I didn't, sillily enough. Is that a word? Sillily?
Sure.
Sillily enough. I didn't. Sure, let's go with that.
Sure, why not?
I'm not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree either. So there we go. Sillily enough. I felt that it would be more quickly accepted by the gurus and taken on. And just because my clients love it, they find me, they know me, they open their mind to it, they do it, and they're expecting the industry to provide them with the most updated information. And yet a lot of those people are very nervous to rock the boat or step out of the status quo or upset their colleagues or the status that they've held. So I didn't expect for it to take this long. So I'm still in that. And I would like to teach it on a larger scale in collaboration. And once that's done, then I can move to my next thing. So I have to, maybe I'm at some point where maybe that will happen after. Maybe if I went and got my master's in I do a BA from a recognized, near where you are, Western University in London, Ontario. So I have a BA. Is it worth my time and money to go and get these degrees is that something that's going to, because you take Jane Goodall, I mean, she worked hands-on and learned what she knew from doing it hands-on. When she went back, she got her degrees from university simply so that what she knew, and she could spread it faster and people recognized her but what she actually learned working hands-on didn't change. That was just put on a shelf while she went and I don't mean to speak for her, and I know I'm bringing it down to a nutshell and bringing everything she's done down to something, but I have seen her live, and I do remember that where, you know, it's, do you put that aside so that you can get the credentials or put a name out for yourself? When you come back, it still is what it is. It hasn't changed. Yeah. And if it were to be able to be out there as courses and being taught to rescue organizations and influential large organizations that influence other, you know, rescuers and pet owners, pet people, pet lovers, without that, yeah, you're catching me right at a time where I am making that decision, and feedback's always good. I mean, any of your listeners that have any feedback on that. I mean, I have definitely for a while been at that point of, okay, here I am one-on-one, and I love it, and perhaps hide in it a little bit because my clients are awesome. And it is so emotionally wonderful to see that change and to save that, you know, even though it's my profession as well, which is not just volunteer, but also it's my profession and a successful one. It's hard to leave that, but I do need to take that step.
I can just see anybody going against you and losing bad. Losing bad. I mean, real bad. You know, I mean, I just see that person who just harmed a dog or something.
I love that.
And they just look at you and you give them your look, and it's like, they just know they're done. You know, that's, I mean, you're definitely a fighter, no question about it. I mean, you're definitely somebody who's very passionate about what you love, and the people that bring you, you know, the creatures that bring you love, and the dogs and everything. And like, I mean, your heart's huge. I mean, it's massive, you know, what you can bring.
Thank you.
I think that is somebody, yeah, for sure. I mean,
Thanks. Well, back at you. I think you're the same way. I see you as exactly the same way. And it's tough. I mean, it's always easier to follow the norm and go with the status quo. Yeah. But I learned what I know from dogs, and I owe it to them, and it does work. It is successful, and I need to continue to spread awareness on it. The root of doing that, I guess sometimes I've sort of gone off. But thank you for that. I really appreciate that, because sometimes I think people like yourselves and animal advocates and people who do really good things, sometimes we do feel, you know, what the fuck? What are we doing here? Yeah. Is this working? Should we be doing, like, what is going on? And then other times it's yeah, this is, you have to stick with what you know is right in your heart, and you have to stick with it and do the best you can do.
Yeah.
But better than that.
I mean, I've only gotten to know you a couple hours, but it's like, I'm your number 2 fan, and I think you can do it. I believe in you. I definitely believe in you.
Thank you so much.
Number 1 fan, of course, are your pets. I mean, the dogs and your clients and stuff, because they know you a lot longer than I have. But I'm definitely number 2 fan for sure. I think you definitely.
I love this. Thank you so much.
You're quite a.
So are you. This podcast I've listened to quite a number of that. Some of your guests are phenomenal, and the way you have of bringing out. I mean, you did it right off the get-go on this show. I mean, like I said, I never share that. But yeah, you're awesome. You're great. And the opportunity to share this and spread it. And I know your listeners are really cool people. I can tell from your podcast that your listeners are. So it's nice to be on a podcast that's not dog related. It's people.
Yeah.
It's about people. And that is so cool. That's so great for me. Yeah. I love it.
And because I think
it's so great for everyone.
I find, like, I think I mentioned, I forgot if I mentioned this too, but it's not that I don't have anything. It's not like I have anything against Sam Harris. I don't know him. Never met him. I've read his work. He's an interesting man. He retains a lot of information. but he's not the single parent who had to make a choice between two bills. He's not somebody who has spent 30 years of their life on trying to help people understand how to, get along with other animals. Like, he's interesting. I'd love to talk to him someday, but you're way more interesting than he is, as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? I find that way more interesting than somebody who just, who reads a bunch of books.
That's like probably the best compliment I've ever received. I really appreciate that. I don't really intend to be. I've been called the unintentional rebel because I just do what I do. And sometimes I don't even realize that people are, and it can be hurtful too when people, so hearing compliments like that is great. There was one podcast I was on and she introed it. But she did the intro after we had our chat, as I think I do and probably you do. But she compared me to the Dos Equis guy, the most interesting guy in the world. And I thought, that's hilarious. It cracked me up. And she said, I know Billy won't care. I was like, no, I didn't care. I thought it was really funny.
Well, we have to meet in person one day. But when we do, we'll have to get out a couple of Dos Equis and cheer to you. And cheer to you too.
Some IPAs.
Yeah, because
and to you.
Yeah,
we got to do that for sure. I'll bring you my book.
Yeah, I'm currently not doing much of anything right now, which is working and writing my book and recovering from injury. But like when I do get more, when I have more money and more of something, I definitely want to get more involved in what you do and help expand the world, because we need to get along with animals. They're not us for dominating. And it's from that stupid Christian thing where they said that, and in the Bible, we shall have dominion over the animals. It doesn't mean we need to beat the shit out of them. It doesn't mean that we need to, to put them outside, chain them to a rope when it's 40 below zero. It means we have, we care for them. I mean, for Christ's sake, there's so many freaking Christians out there who interpret that as being, like it's your job to be sadistic. It's like, no, it's your job to be a caregiver. Yeah, it's my soapbox.
Yes. But no, I love your soapbox because it gets right back to what we were talking about on people can justify anything. They can open the Bible and pick something and then justify it. It's like, what the hell? Like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
my soapbox has got all kinds of stuff painted on it.
Oh yeah. And so that is why, I would love, like I said, lawyer or, some other journalist. That's another one I wanted to be. They have a lot of power.
Absolutely.
Journalists, and so many journalists now are just, I don't know, they seem to be more worried about public relations than anything. They need to be say what they have such an ability to make a difference. And that was another one I really wanted to do when I was younger and feel that just has so much ability to make change, and yet they're worried about disrupting the status quo. It's like, get a soapbox, stand on it and do it. And, like I said, I don't want to turn away people that I'm trying to attract. So I need to balance that, but there's no excuse for harming animals. There's no excuse, and people need to.
Do you feel like having a blog would help out quite a bit, would bring out your inner journalist?
That's interesting. I've thought, and YouTube and a blog. I have to say, I'm only really sort of understanding blogs. I love writing. So I would say yes. I do have, I think for me, it's a matter, I'd like to, like I said, it's the animal advocacy. There are so many avenues, and I'd love to hear feedback or suggestions. I mean, if you have more suggestions, or your listeners, I'm open to suggestions on how to, or collaborations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm down. Anything. Because right now, the only thing I can offer is my time. I don't have much money or anything right now.
Well, this podcast is great. You can offer a lot, and you're amazing. You have a lot to offer. You don't need a lot of money. You don't have any money.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, we will have it, but just not right now. Just right now, it's building foundations and stuff. So, but after I read your book and I know I'm going to like it, I'm going to promote the heck out of it. Then we'll have a dinner somewhere at Dos Equis and make sure it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah. I can't wait. Oh, and if I was in Toronto, we'd be even closer. So, that's a goal too.
Because
I yeah, absolutely.
I've been in Toronto.
Or down in New York. I love New York.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Now it's a different story now. New York was pretty rough for a second.
Absolutely.
Now it's gotten a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty, but I mean now I live in the country. I get to see deer.
Right.
I'm around.
Wow, that's
I'm around
phenomenal.
tons of coyotes. You hear them out every night.
Oh, I'll come there. That sounds awesome.
Every night,
That's
yeah.
great.
Come on down.
That sounds
You're more than welcome to come down. There's always coyotes. Always.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And sometimes they come out during the daytime. I know in April when they finally start to come out of their cocoons or caves or whatever, and they really get hungry. You see them quite a bit during the daytime, which I was very fascinated by. But yeah, I see some real big ones here.
Back to your climate change. They are being affected by it there, or at least where I live, they're working in packs earlier. So they didn't used to start doing that till more deep into our winter, but they've actually been seen in packs. And one of the dogs that I worked with from the Korean meat market who came up, Radar, his mom, she also adopted one of the Mexican dogs that I brought up. But anyway, she takes them all out to the country, and he was attacked by a pack of them, and she wasn't expecting it this early in the season. So they are changing. They are, and they're so beautiful, and they're so great and wonderful, and they need their space, and they need to adapt to what we're doing to this planet, and I can't even imagine how hard it is on some of the animals to figure out what the hell we're doing. Humans are doing. But anyway,
I talked to a friend of mine. Well, it was a friend of mine who spoke with somebody who is very, very deep into the climate change thing, and she just basically asked him flat out, "Is there hope? Is there hope?" And he just said no. He said it's changing. It's going to change. What we need to do now is stop the bleeding as much as possible. But it is going to change. It is changing at a rate quicker than we thought it would be. You're starting to see a lot of the sea levels rise, and all these people living on these islands at one point now have to go find shelter elsewhere on the mainland. And you're starting to see that a lot more in India, I believe. You're starting to see a lot of people traveling over and trying to get over to the neighboring countries. And I can see where it's making a huge effect, and it's not good. I mean, because even in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, when you drive out of Denver and you go into the Rocky Mountains, you see whole sides of mountains where there's just no trees. There's no trees whatsoever. Yeah. Because the Asian beetles, which the winters would kill it, now it's warmer. Now they're just devastating all sides of the mountains. It looked like a logging company came along and just wiped out the entire sides of mountains with trees. But no, it's the Asian beetles are just tearing down all these trees and eating them up. So
and that's what I was thinking about before. Yeah. It's certainly not my area of expertise, but there's no denying it. And there's no denying it. It's,
right.
Yeah, we need change on very many levels. And there are people doing wonderful, great things. And there's people out there making change and making a stance, and get a soapbox. Everybody needs a soapbox.
Yeah. If you want change, we'll have an ear for you, right?
Yeah, your podcast is great, and
so
you're doing wonderful things.
Your podcast, what is it called?
Dog Training Disrupted, which is by UPWARD Dogology, and the UP is big, upward. So Dog Training Disrupted, which is funny because it's not really a dog training podcast, but it's disrupting the dog training world.
As it should.
Depending on how people view it, as it should, as it needs disrupting in a good way, in a positive way. So, but disrupting isn't negative.
And then your book is, as
it's
I
needed.
have here, it is Rescued Dogs, the Misunderstood Breed.
That's Yeah, it's actually on Amazon. It's called The Art of Urban People with Adopted and Rescued Dogs Methodology. That's actually the title. But the people who, the marketing people and all those people, what the book's about is larger. I don't know if you know that as an author, but they're doing that a lot with books now, where the actual title is smaller and then what the book is about and the author is larger.
No, I have to get I have to get over my abusive side before I can finish a book. So I'm at the point now where it's coming along so well. I'm scared. I'm actually scared now. It's coming. Yeah,
I love it. I think that's awesome.
No, it's the werewolf. The werewolf genre has not been touched in a long time. So I like this aspect, and it's got everything in there. It's got zombies. It's got Frankenstein. It's got all kinds of all that old school stuff.
Oh, cool.
I mean, it's not actual Frankenstein, but it's like a Frankenstein-esque person and all that stuff. So no, there's no mummy. That's kind of like a Dracula in there, I guess. But so that's right cool. Now it's.
I look forward to reading it.
Done. Well, you definitely get a signed copy for sure.
Wow!
I promise you that one.
Right on. Oh, I'm so excited. I think I love fiction. That's so cool.
Well,
That's so
looks
great.
If you need any ideas or anything, just write an email to me and whatever. More than happy to help you out.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch for sure.
But,
I'm sure, and we're always in touch on LinkedIn. So glad I met you.
Well, I mean, it's been a real honor, real honor to have met you.
Thank you. And, you as well. This has been very, very fun, and thank you so much.
And
You're
you
awesome.
as well, and thank you for
Thanks,
doing
Chris.
this. And the thing is, we didn't have a pre-interview, so we just kind of winged it. So I'm glad we did.
Oh yeah, we winged it. That's for sure. It was awesome.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to our website, thefoolpodcast.com, and follow us. We'd appreciate your support. More episodes are soon on their way.